Hey, Post Road Jen, I'm Kristan Hawkins. Welcome to this new How to Win This Week episode on the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. Today, we're going to talk about what pro-lifers think of IVF. So apparently everybody wants to know these days since Roe's been reversed. Which, by the way, let's just back it up. For a long time, pro-lifers have been raising questions and objections to IVF practices, saying, wait a minute, we're creating human beings in labs, freezing them, thawing them. More than 9 out of 10 of these children who are being created in IVF clinics never live long enough to breathe. Okay? We've been raising questions for a long time about this, and we've been told, oh, what are you talking about? IVF doesn't kill any human beings. The moment Roe versus Wade's reversed, what does every mainstream media person want to ask me on TV or on the radio or for a newspaper? Well, are you going to ban IVF because IVF ends the life of human embryos? Exactly what we've been saying all along. So, okay, stop gaslighting. And yes, we've been right this whole time. I think it would lead a logical person to ask, what else has the abortion industry and the mainstream media been lying to us about? But I'll stop there. But I want to go into this question about IVF. I know this is a hard discussion. There are Students for Life leaders. There are people serving in the pro-life movement who've been conceived using IVF. There's many in our movement who've struggled with infertility and who may have undergone IVF procedures. This is not an easy subject because we know so many struggle with infertility. And trust me, as pro-lifers, we're all about having families and making babies, right? We have the big vans, and that's what we go to church and Chick-fil-A in, right? But we have to have some real honest conversations about in vitro fertilization, IVF, and what it does. I do think this is, a time right now with the reversal of Roe versus Wade, the Dobbs decision, we're about saving innocent children from the violence of abortion. The mainstream media wants to deflect and not talk about the violence of abortion, so they keep bringing up IVF. And so I get a little frustrated because I'm like, hey, let's talk about dismembering babies. And then they don't want to talk about that. And they say, well, let's talk about IVF. You pro-lifers hate people who are suffering from infertility and you want them to be doomed never to be parents. It's literally the narrative they're trying to paint. But I do think we should have real and honest conversations about IVF. Now, I get in some trouble about this because some pro-lifers feel like we should just not talk about this at all. But I do think we need to tell the truth. And this is a moment for telling the truth. I don't think we've been very clear in the pro-life movement. Since the fall of Roe, the laws we're trying to pass in states, the momentum we're trying to keep moving forward is about ending the painful, gruesome, violent practice of abortion. Our intention in the pro-life movement hasn't been focused on ending IVF treatments. But I do think that this is a time to maybe start some conversations about how in vitro fertilization is actually conducted in our country and what it does. This is an educational moment, an opportunity for us. The issue we're talking about when we discuss IVF is creating human beings that are viewed as commodities, who in some cases, depending on their genetic code after they've been screened in the lab, are seen as disposable. This is a concern for us in the pro-life movement, the commoditization of human beings, because let's make it very clear, no one has the right to own another human being. That's why slavery was a fundamental moral wrong. That's why abortion is wrong, because in abortion, we say that a woman owns her child because her child is located within her body for 9 months. Therefore, that child is a possession, and a woman can do whatever she wants with that child as long as it remains in her body. This is what happens with IVF. Couples, or maybe just one person, owns other human beings. And we make them a commodity. Becoming a parent is the greatest honor I've ever had. It's also the greatest responsibility I'll ever have. But it's not my right. It's a privilege, but it's not a right. And I think we need to back up the conversation. I think we need to clarify that right now. I mean, the abortion lobby has things so twisted. They say you have a right, no matter what it costs, to create human beings if you want to be a parent. And you also have a right to kill human beings if they're inconvenient to you. It's unbelievable. IVF does treat human beings as disposable because there are no laws about how IVF is even conducted in our country. You can choose to implant after your embryos, note they say your is actually the term they use, your embryos. After the new human beings have been created, you can choose in some of the clinics if you want to implant just the girls or just the boys. There's no law in the book saying you can't pick a blonde-haired, blue-eyed human embryo versus a brown-haired, short and stocky one. Sorry, I had to stop. I had to add that in there. Thanks, Dad, for that genetic material. Children, like my children, who have cystic fibrosis, are frequently screened out in IVF procedures. In fact, there's a whole movement in the CF community. Every cystic fibrosis medical team has a geneticist on staff. Why would I need a geneticist? Well, because if parents already have one child with CF, they can prevent another child from having CF. How do you ask would they do that? It's called IVF. You take human embryos that the parents, have donated their genetic material to, whether it was an egg or sperm. Once those two things are created, remember we've gone over this before, that's a human being. And then they screen those new human beings. The ones who test positive for CF are either thrown away in the garbage, that is eugenics, or donated for research. This is a common practice in the cystic fibrosis community. It's absolutely appalling. As a mom with 2 children who are deeply loved, 2 children who will make a significant impact on this world, to say that their lives have less value, that they could have been thrown away in some lab simply because of their genetics, just because of their DNA, it's atrocious. This is not a podcast that's making a moral judgment against someone who's used IVF or someone who was conceived in IVF. I'm saying this today because I think we need to have some really hard conversations. And then it's apparently time for those conversations because now the mainstream media has stopped its lying and has finally admitted what we've been saying all along, which is IVF is ending human lives.